John Elway stood at the podium on Black Friday, just a few hours after handing Vance Joseph his walking papers, and spoke in a very contrite manner. Elway appeared humbled, with emotion barely below the surface of his voice. Podcast embedded below. It was a tough day for Denver's GM and president of football operations. After 3 straight seasons of missing the playoffs, including back-to-back double-digit loss finishes, the man looked shaken. "I will say this, when you go through these types of things, everybody's going to be looking for who is responsible," Elway said. "It's our job as individuals, and really, my job with what I do and the way I look at this, is the first look at as the guy in the mirror. That's me, and I'm just as responsible for this, if not more than anybody else, because it's my job to make sure we win more football games. I take full responsibility for that." Elway did everything but fall on the sword. He accepted his fair share of the blame and vowed to reflect on his decision-making process and the Broncos' moves and MO. On the personnel side, the ground he covered there, in the true spirit of change, was encouraging. What was less than encouraging, however, was Elway's continued reticence to use the R-word, rebuild. "You can call it whatever you want," Elway said. "To me, a rebuild sounds like an excuse, and I'm not going to make any excuses. We're going to bust our tails to try to get better, try to get back to where we're competitive and do it next year." Elway's stubborn resistance to using rebuild to describe where the Broncos sit right now is borderline delusional. He claims he doesn't like it because it sounds like an excuse to him. What's next for the Denver Broncos? Don't miss out on any news and analysis. Take a second to sign up for our free Broncos newsletter, delivered 3 times daily. But let's face it, the Broncos aren't 1 or 2 moves, or even 1 head coaching hire away from the playoffs. Until the Broncos find and develop a true franchise quarterback, the best they can start this coming season, even with a great hire at head coach, is at square 2, as opposed to square 1, or square 10, where world champion teams reside. On the latest episode of the Huddle Up podcast, Zach Kelberman and I explain why it's important for Elway, at least privately, to embrace Denver's need to rebuild. And why the next head coach absolutely cannot be saddled with the "a Super Bowl or bust" mentality. It's up to John Elway to set the organizational expectations. That's where the fan base and media take their cues. Of course, everyone wants to win a world championship. But if the Broncos don't honestly and realistically address where this team sits, they'll be doomed to repeat the mistakes of the past. On today's episode of the podcast, we also break down each of the 5 head coaching interviews the Broncos have in the hopper. Which one makes the most sense? Should the fans be getting excited about any of them? Listen in the podcast player above.